Today we're going to talk about emotions, and from Swamiji's book, The Art of Joyful Living. And specifically, we're going to talk about streams of negative emotions, and in alignment with that, we're going to talk about the four functions of mind: manas, chitta, ahankara, and buddhi, and the four primitive urges, as well as the source, the deepest source of all of these emotions. And in the chapters of this book, there's 12 chapters, but this material is covered substantially in 2 of the chapters. Chapter 4 is about the nature of negative emotions, and chapter 5 is about transcending desires and purifying samskaras. So between those 2 chapters, he talks about emotions, the source of the emotions, down to the deepest level of the most latent, deep habit pattern. And then after that, he talks, we're not going to go into this, after that he talks about developing strength and willpower. And the reason for that at that point is once you get down to the point where you're really exploring the unconscious, this is where you really need strength and willpower to be undisturbed, unaffected, and uninvolved by what's going on in that exploration. Before that, he starts the whole theme by talking about knowing yourself at all levels, and then about positive living and the transformation of habit patterns, then about perfecting the personality. And in that process of perfecting the personality, it leads to the discussion of negative emotions. And when you start talking about negative emotions, you necessarily end up talking about the samskaras, the deepest of the habit patterns. And so, we're going to start with the streams of emotion. Swamiji starts his discussion of negative emotions by talking about gestures. Makes a very important point. If I move my hand and make certain gestures as I speak, what prompts me to do that? Most of our gestures are actually unconscious. So perhaps as I speak, my fingers are moving or some other part of my body is moving. The body has a particular language of its own, which we call body language. The body creates gestures and movements because all its actions are governed and controlled by the thoughts. Any movement means that some thought that exists in the mind is being expressed. This is an important point. Your actions are controlled by and are the result of your thoughts, both conscious and unconscious. Everything your body does has a meaning. If you overeat, you burp. If your body aches or is stiff, you will move in a certain way. When your body is in pain, others can tell from your movement that there is something wrong with you and that you are in pain. Your gestures are totally influenced by your thought process. And he's using this as the introduction to the subject of negative emotions. When he gets into them, he talks about 6 streams of emotions. It is important to understand the negative emotions, to know what they are and from where they arise. The spiritual scriptures of the ancients that describe the path of sadhana have analyzed the negative emotions and categorized them. The first of these emotions is kama, the prime desire. Kama is the mother of all other desires, and it gives rise to both the desire to satisfy or gratify the senses and the beneficial desire to help others selflessly. Kama is the prime desire, and from it arises all of the other desires. Number 2, if kama is not fulfilled, if the desire is not fulfilled, then you become frustrated and angry, krodha. When you become angry, it actually means that one of your desires is unfulfilled, and that prompts you to become angry. This can be used as a very effective self-awareness tool, because if you notice all of a sudden a little wave of frustration goes through your mind, you feel it, you know that something's wrong. You can pause and ask yourself, Why am I feeling like this? And some answer will come. The complete and accurate definition of anger is the emotion resulting from unfulfilled desires that you have not learned how to arrange, to pacify, or to understand. Thus, anger means there is some desire that needs to be understood and resolved. Number 3, if your desire is achieved and karma is fulfilled, then pride or muda results. Thus, when the desire is fulfilled, you become proud. But if it is not fulfilled, then you become angry. Because of this, you need to be careful to observe yourself clearly. When a desire is fulfilled, you should observe whether it feeds your pride, and if it is not fulfilled, observe whether it feeds your anger. If you pay attention, you'll notice that once the karma is there, those always happen. It may be so small that we want to say to ourselves that it wasn't there. I wasn't angry. So we'll say things like, well, I wasn't angry, but I was a little bit irritated. But we're seeing what it was. We're seeing what happened. You have to watch yourself carefully for these two reactions. You need to learn to make inner experiments with your own emotions when you seek to work with yourself and go within. The subject of how to work with your own emotions and develop yourself fully is usually never taught or discussed in daily life. In fact, to the serious student of meditation, there is only one real book to study and learn from, the greatest of all books, and that is the very manuscript that you yourself are. So if we want to understand these principles, it doesn't just come from theory out of books. The place to look and learn what they really mean is inside. This manuscript has been written by you. You are the author of your life. If you want to learn, this is the book from which you must study. Then number 4. So first we had kama, desire itself, anger, krodha, and muda, or pride. 4th is when a desire is fulfilled and you attain what you long for, then you become attached to it. This attachment is called moha, the sense, this is mine. When you attain something, you become attached to it and you want to keep it, repeat the experience, and fear losing it. Actually, there is an irony in life, Swamiji says. When you say, this is mine, the object actually is not yours. And on the other hand, when you claim, this is not mine, then actually it is yours. You'll constantly observe in life that you claim that something is yours or something else is not yours. This body is yours, for example, but you have no control over it. You make such false claims your whole life. You live with these false claims. Sometimes you laugh about them, and sometimes you cry. Sometimes you become overwhelmed with pride for all your achievements and accomplishments. Sometimes you become disturbed emotionally because certain important desires of your desire world have not been fulfilled. Then, he says, then comes the next step, lobha. When you are attached to something, you become greedy. You want more, or you want to do it again. This greed is never fulfilled, no matter what you do. Once you are attached to something, you can never have enough. The fire of greed is horrible. The fire of your greed is so intense that you cannot believe its destructiveness. It can even make you sick. There are actually diseases in which greed and longing lead to physical illness. Such an emotion can make you obsessed by something. Then, when you become greedy, you also become jealous of others and insecure by comparing yourself to them. And this jealousy elsewhere, Swamiji talks about being 7 streams of emotion. Here in this text he's talking about 6. And where he talks about 7, the 7th one is the jealousy. Others have it and I don't. I want it, I'm not getting it, and somebody else did get it, and so we end up jealous of that person. Little suggestion, he says here. Whatever you do, whether it is the kind of clothes you wear, the way you walk, or the way you talk, do not do it for others. If your neighbor does something, so you also do it. It makes you become a kind of reactionary. Something destructive happens to you, you lose touch with yourself, and you become a mere reactor to others. Then you don't do what you really value, what you think or believe. You do only what others value. When this happens, you no longer live for yourself. You begin to live for others in a very negative way. Often you live for your neighbors in such a negative fashion. Perhaps your neighbors dislike you, so you dislike the neighbors, and that's how you live your whole life. Then hatred and jealousy become a part of your life. It goes on. The next and sixth major stream of emotion is ahamkara, the sense of I amness. This little I, which you use every day to refer to yourself and not to others, becomes the center of your life. That word that you use again and again in your daily life, I, becomes the center of your awareness. You say, I am doing this. I am not doing that. I do not want to do this. All this is the work of ahamkara. And there's a feeling to it. If you listen to this carefully, it's talking about ahamkara as ego, as an emotional surge. Not merely as ahamkara as an instrument, but ahamkara as an emotional surge. And we can all feel it. You use all your differences, your defense mechanisms, to protect yourself and your ahamkara. You need to understand what ahamkara does for you. The sense of I-ness prompts you to live on the earth and to have a particular individuality. Because of ahamkara, you are an individual. But then ahamkara also separates you from the whole. When a wife and a husband, two lovers, touch a peak that is beyond ahamkara, that is real joy. Ahamkara itself will never give you joy. Instead, it will contract your personality. It enables you to become an individual, which is good, but it will never give you joy. You only attain joy when you completely forget ahamkara. Simple act, simply forget it. When you are no longer limited by ahamkara. But how is it possible for you to live without a sense of I-ness? Swamiji goes on to say, that's not possible, to live without I-ness. So it's better to polish your ahamkara. Just as you polish your shoes and use them every day, and then eventually they are worn out, so should you polish your ahamkara, your ego. All your prayers, all your loves, all your concerns, all your friendships, anything you consider important in your life, you do because of ahamkara. You think that you love your husband and he thinks that he loves you, but really you each love your own ahamkara.